Okay, good morning, everybody. Well, so I always default to that, but good evening or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'll just do a quick sound check and visual check. If people could give me the thumbs up if you're hearing and seeing me okay. Terrific, thank you. All good. Great, I'll just quickly scroll in to see who's dropping in the chat box. Nice to see Mark and Lana from Auckland. Hello. Yeah, they were just with us on this last weekend retreat. And Amanda as well, who was there, who's local. Lovely. And people from the States, all over the US and UK. Lovely. New Mexico, British Columbia. Great. Some people tuning in from different parts of Australia and Croatia. Nice to see you, Daniel. Zimbabwe. Great. Italy. Fantastic. There we go, Toronto, Canada and Portugal. Gigi in Boston. Lovely. Good to connect with you all at this time. So let me see if I've got screen on. Yeah. So today is our just a standard regular guided meditation and opportunity for questions through the chat box afterwards. We're coming up to the end of the year really quickly, which is amazing. So 2 weeks from now will be the sixth and final session of my Buddha Dharma series. If you're available to tune into that, or it'll always be there on the archives on YouTube, so you can catch up with it later. And there's Niall from Sydney, who's also on retreat with us. Hi, Niall. Very good. Okay, so let's get into the meditation. We'll start with maybe approximately 25 to 30 minutes for meditation. And, people are tuning in mostly through Samaneri Jayasara's YouTube channel, which we have a whole range of traditions speaking to the truth, to Dhamma in various ways. So if you've tuned into a lot of those teachings, you'll start to recognize the similarity, even though the words and the pointers may sound a bit different. Words, concepts, approaches. After a little while, you start to, of doing those meditations, you start to sense very clearly that the pointers of all these wise beings are pointing to the same reality. In the beginning, it might be a bit confusing listening to words from different traditions. But the more you do follow the pointers and listen across to the different masters, it starts to sink in. We have to also see the way concepts work, the way our mind is conditioned by particular words and concepts in our cultural viewpoint. And just to see that this is part of the conditioned mind. For one example, the word God can bring up so many different perceptions for people depending on not only their cultural conditioning, but their particular experience in their particular religious conditioning. Or the words self and not self can bring up different perceptions for different people. Again, depending on our conditioning, depending on what we conceive, how we perceive that word, what we conceive that it's pointing to in our own mental constructs. So just keeping an open mind when we hear these pointers and continuing to listen internally. The pointers are all pointing back to where you are right now in your very present awareness. The sense of being, the sense of connectedness with here and now. So I'm going to guide us into this meditation now, and while we'll do the meditation, I'll ask you to refrain from putting questions in the chat box until the end of that meditation, and then we can look to those questions and have a little discussion. So for now, settling into your meditation posture, whether you're sitting on the floor or on a chair, or if you're not feeling so energetic or so well, perhaps lying down. Firstly, bringing conscious intention to be aware of your body, how the body feels right now. Not conceptually, but sensing into the very sensations that indicate physicality, this experience of embodiment. You can notice the particular sense of shape that your body has taken, lying, sitting, cross-legged or in a chair. The sensations of the feeling of weight of the body. The sense of pressure where you feel the weight of the body, the seat of your body contacting the cushion of the chair, or the weight of your body on a bed or a couch. That point of contact where we feel pressure. And notice what else is indicating body to you right now. The particular sensations where perhaps our hands are resting in each other, in our lap or on the thighs. Any particular sensations in the body where there might be tension or tightness or even some pain, and just noticing those sensations. And of course, the sensations of the breath, of the body breathing. The body breathes as its own function. The body and the breath intimately connected. The body breathes as a function of its own life, breathing in the nutrients from the environment, feeding the cells, keeping the body alive, and breathing out what's no longer needed. The body, through the breath, in constant exchange with the so-called outer environment. The air from outside the body comes in, and the spent carbon dioxide and other nutrients in the breath is expelled on the out-breath. The intelligence within every cell of the body knows what to do, knows how to process this intelligence of life. Not separate from its environment, but part and parcel, the co-emergent manifestation, life within life. All around this body, the environment teems with life in all dimensions. And within this body, this structure is teeming with life in all kind of microscopic dimensions, teeming with life and intelligence. So in this meditation, I want to encourage you to see if you can simply rest your attention in this experience of being, this direct, non-conceptual reality of being here and now, aware of this functionality of body, breath, life, intelligent functioning, inside, outside, interconnected, co-emergent. There's nothing that this ego mind has to do right now. It's simply take the opportunity to allow our attention to rest in awareness itself. So that doesn't mean that nothing happens, because this experience of life, this form with its 6 sense bases, we experience sounds, the sound of my voice right now, sound of the birds, whatever sounds you may hear within your own environment, just appearing, disappearing, conditioned moments of sound. And we're aware of that. Being aware that such sounds, they come and go, they change. They're in a flux, a flow, a stream, a river of sound. Similarly with the sense door of sensations, where through the sensitive nerve endings in the body, there's a stream of sensations that we may be aware of. They come, they go, they appear, disappear, arise and cease within their own stream. And the mind, the intellect, the mind as intellect, that particular function of mind that generates thoughts, perceptions, concepts, that takes up the other sense data and begins to perceive and conceive. Just know this function as another stream, a flow of phenomena, mental phenomena arising, ceasing, appearing, disappearing, gurgling like a gently moving brook. Or sometimes the intellect can be moving as fast as a gushing river. So we can know this like any other sense impression. Attention is drawn for a moment. We can recognize. And if we recognize the sense impression as changing, as natural, as fleeting. We don't have to pick it up. We don't have to engage with it conceptually to make more out of it. Just let it be and recognize the field of awareness as a broader field of knowing, of awareness, of pure receptivity. And we learn to rest attention in that, or let attention become familiar with that. It's not a thing. It can only be sensed and known directly, not conceived of, not held, not reified. So at first it feels like your attention may be jumping around between sense impressions. And just notice how that feels, how that is. And as we recognize the possibility to rest more into the receptive field, which embraces the whole, that movement of attention will begin to settle more and more. Sense impressions become less jarring. They flow more like a slow-moving, gentle stream. We can use the impressions of any sense door to wake up to the present moment. That means coming out of conceptualizing, coming out of dreaming. And recognizing ever-present awareness. Perhaps first through sense impression and then just resting attention. So this isn't meant to sound like it's something you have to do or work at or make a lot of effort with. It's really just relaxing the mind and the body, relaxing, recognizing, resting, or remembering here, now. reconnecting in receptivity. So the subtle skills that we learn is waking up when we realize that habitual mind, habitual thinking has, let's say, contracted attention into a thought stream. We just wake up, recognize that's happening. As soon as we recognize awareness in the present moment is more apparent. Awareness is the whole field of receptivity. And that thought stream is dispelled. Attention is released from that particular tunnel and can rest again or merge again in the wider field of awareness. Excuse me. And we don't try to block any particular experience. What comes, comes. We just learn to recognize, and if there's grasping at it, hanging on to it, to let go. It's a very simple recognition. Or if we're trying to push something away, keep it out of awareness, we recognize that and Just let it be. Which again comes through the recognition of not wanting, pushing away, blocking. It's a kind of a shutting down of awareness in a particular way, as is hanging on to or wanting. So the simple act of recognizing, relaxing, or opening allows that release or letting go. And what does that feel like? The habituated movement of attention, a mental factor, is to want to land on things, to know something, to follow something. But if we see that so often just contracts this field of awareness, or seemingly feels more confined, we learn to let attention rest into awareness itself, which isn't blocking the sense impressions, but rather resting in a broader field of knowing. Allowing the flow of life, intelligence, the natural flow of responsiveness when we need, or when the system needs to respond in some way. We learn to trust. We learn to trust that perspective, that, I don't want to call it a position because that's contracting things to one point in time and place. We learn to trust this orientation. Our habitual doing mind wants to focus down and make things happen according to our changeable desires, thoughts. But in meditation, this is our opportunity to see that functionality and what it produces, and to have an opportunity to rest out of that and see what happens as a consequence. So, as we come into the last few moments or few minutes of this meditation, just connect more specifically, more intentionally once again with the feelings, the sensations of the body and the movement of the breath. And just notice this stream of sensations of body and breath. And with our intention, just generate a thought of kindness towards this particular localized system, this particular manifestation of physicality. A simple thought of, may you be well. May this, or even may I be well. Whatever feels resonant for you, just a sense of well-wishing towards yourself, this being embodied here in this moment. And with that feeling of well-wishing based in kindness and compassion, allow that to be generated all around you. Simply may all beings be well. Returning that intention to let that energy move outwards and beyond in all directions. Above, below, around. Never ending, like the streaming light of the sun moving in all directions. Not through effort, but through its very nature. Radiating this wish of may all beings be well. Staying in the center and letting the radiating light of that well-wishing spread naturally as it does. And now coming back to take one deep in breath and a long out breath as we come back into this shared space of the live stream. Taking your own time to reconnect, and if you have any questions coming up, you can pop them into the chat and I can speak to them for the next 45 minutes or so. Okay, so someone has popped in a question. I think it arose quite early. question, what is not self? Because that's what I mentioned before we went into our meditation as one of those words and concepts that can be confounding for people who are not familiar with the Buddhist tradition. So I'm going to try and put this very simply in the context of what I've already said. So not self is a concept, is a notion. It points to the fact that self is also a notion, a concept. And when you see that as it is, that's when you realize what's called not self, or anatta. Meaning that when you see that this notion of self, of I, me, mine, is a very conditioned mental construct, but essentially a thought, a concept, you see that it's impermanent, that it's insubstantial, like any other thought or sense impression. And that's when you recognize this experience of not self. It simply means that such concepts and sense impressions are insubstantial, are fleeting. And it has been our assumptions, our projections, our conditioning that takes thoughts, sense impressions, concepts, notions, views to be real, representative of, substantial, unchanging reality. So this notion of not self is just challenging that by saying, have a look at what it is and see how substantial or insubstantial it is. In essence, this not self is just waking up from the illusion of seeing this notion as permanent, or seeing anything whatsoever as permanent, unchanging. So others might have questions around that, which I could talk a bit more, but we'll see what else comes up. So Jayesh asks, what was the realization that the Buddha had under the Bodhi tree that finally led to his enlightenment? Well, in the vicinity of what I was just talking about, Jayesh, seeing the impermanent and insubstantial nature of all conditioned phenomena. That's what he saw very clearly. And when he saw that clearly, the experience of suffering, of mental stress or despair, any kind of mental suffering, just collapsed, because this suffering was built on not seeing reality as it is, which is called ignorance. And if there's ignorance, the mind starts to construct notions, ideas, builds mental constructs that we perceive to be real and true in an unquestioning way, and proceed to build more ideas and perceptions and concepts and react to things from this place, this assumption of permanence, of substantiality with regards to phenomena. Now, this can be quite subtle, or it can be quite obvious, but It's only when we start to look at the nature of experience itself through the 6 sense fields of experience and through that which knows and sees, that through seeing that these are, just as I was guiding in the meditation, fleeting perceptions and highly conditioned. Our perceptions and our way of conceiving is highly conditioned. But this can be known directly through the mind, the sensitive mind that is aware at its core. And this is what we call wisdom. When through awareness and natural intelligence and this pointing to see the nature of phenomena, of conditioned phenomena, we start to understand how the mind works and how suffering comes into play, this experience of suffering, of dukkha, and how it is allayed. So this is the territory of the Four Noble Truths, which is how the teaching is presented. And the Buddha in his first teaching said, it wasn't until I fully understood these 4 truths, the truth of suffering, how it's caused, how it's allayed or comes to cessation, and how wisdom is developed in this embodied experience of life to allow this suffering to come to cessation. Only in fully penetrating and understanding those 4 truths and fully realizing the cessation of suffering did he come to that full awakening. And this is what he tried to convey in all the teachings that came for the next, I think it was 45 years of his teaching. And in a very simple, direct form, it's what, if you listen again to that meditation I gave, we were working in the same vicinity around these 4 noble truths, which are, without labeling them as such, but it's simply seeing how the mind contracts, how the experience of suffering can arise through a sense of being limited in and as phenomena. And when awareness recognizes that limitation and the inherent stress in that, and returns to or rests in full open awareness with wisdom, such stress, suffering, contraction is dispelled. This is essentially the movement that we learn from. And when we fully realize the fullness of when the penny really drops about conditions, phenomena, and the unconditioned, that which doesn't change, which is inherently aware, that awakening, that full awakening happens. So the mind is no longer deluded by anything that arises and ceases. It just knows clearly what it is and how it functions without identifying. That's natural. It's not something that you have to do with awakening. That's how it is. So I hope that helps address that question. Quite a few coming in, so I'm just scrolling back to get question. How do you let go when there is a lot of push-pull in the mind while trying to meditate? Yeah, so the first thing is to recognize that experience of push-pull, because this is really a lot of our conditioned mental experiences of push-pull. And what's functioning there is that conditioned wanting, not wanting. So we're experiencing phenomena, and subtly the mind is trying to navigate its way through this conditioned process of want this, don't want that. And it's just so habitual and dense often. But the thing is, Catherine, we don't want to get in there and try and sort it out. That just first is to just recognize, this is the push-pull, the movement of the mind. Can you allow, with that perspective, with that awareness of that experience, to just know that? Just as it is. You don't have to engage with it. It's just, yes, it's like that right now. As soon as you can take that perspective, the habit is, like I said in the meditation, we're so used to doing, we're so used to wanting to sort things out and make things the way we want them. So meditation is the opportunity to rest back and just observe. It's like this, in full consciousness. It's like this. Now that starts to establish the right view, the right perspective, because you'll see in just that moment of seeing things as they are, even if it's this push-pull, what I like to say is just breathe with it as it is, because that helps you connect with embodied awareness here and now and coming out of the push-pull. Yes, it's just like that. Can I breathe with it? And then you notice what happens in the mind, in your experience, in the broader sense of things. Usually there's a slight resting out. Or if it's a strong stream, we just continue to notice, and this image of, a fast-moving stream, it's just a fast-moving stream, so we can be aware of that, continue to rest in awareness of that. Eventually, this feeling of being in the push-pull will start to shift to a broader sense of observing the stream with less of a push-pull involved. You still might feel movement and agitation, but it's less so. And the more you recognize that shift, the more the mind will naturally be able to rest out of it. But in meditation, it does take some time, because in our usual way of living and being and acting in the world, when it comes to sitting meditation, we feel the momentum of what we've been involved with. We do, we're big doers. It's not to say that's bad, it's just how our life is. So there's momentum when we first come to the meditation, just what's been going on in your day. So we just learn to take that observing, connect first with the body and the breath, recognize what's happening through the sense doors. It's okay as it is. It's just what's happening. That sets up the right view, the right perspective, and things will begin to settle naturally. But even if they don't within that meditation, you might think it doesn't. You might think, I just sat for 30 minutes and the mind was just... But actually, you've spent more time observing than not, and your body hasn't been moving with that energy. So you'll still get tremendous benefit out of that. And gradually we're establishing this right view, which starts to develop all factors of the path. So intelligence, understanding, knowing through this mindfulness, learning to be more and more present, will gradually develop these qualities to help thin out any delusion and have this experience of more wakefulness. So that's the process with meditation. Can seeking enlightenment be another attachment? Absolutely. When we want anything, a physical object or an idea, a notion, if we don't see that with wisdom, that very wanting and that aiming at something, to put it in the language that I used in this meditation, it contracts the mind, sets up an object, a desired object, And now we're a separate subject aiming at some conceptualized something and thinking we can't feel satisfied till we get that. But this is the very construct of dualistic dukkha, really. Dualistic perception, if we don't see it as it is, it's suffering because we're a separate self striving to get something else somewhere else off in the future. So I'm not okay here now as I am, as things are. So to recognize that desire mind always sets up an object to be had in the future, and some illusion that somehow getting that, things will be fine. So that doesn't mean that enlightenment is not possible. But again, it's about right view, setting up the right path, which is, if you listen again to that meditation, it's always about being here and now. Enlightenment, and you'll hear this in the teachings, enlightenment is already the nature of your own heart, your own mind, in one sense. But it's not seen clearly. That's the same way as saying, the Buddha nature is already present. Whether we say in fullness or in seed form, it's pointing to here now. So by saying that, we're trying to undermine this sense of, I'm not okay right now. I have to get something else to get somewhere else to become okay. But that's not the right view. The right view is actually what you're looking for, what you're desiring, and in that sense, it's already here now. Nature of mind, or the Buddha nature, is already full and perfect. The nature of delusion or ignorance is that we don't see that yet. We don't see that clearly yet. And our habitual mind goes off seeking objects to get some sense of satisfaction or assuage a sense of discomfort, dis-ease. But that trajectory, the Buddha said, is endless. That's samsara. To learn to rest in the present and recognize the true nature of your own mind and heart in its deepest, ultimate sense is the only place where true peace, contentment, and fulfillment or awakening can be found. But again, it's the concepts, it's the ideas. If we don't see them emerging in the mind, it always sets up an object to be gained somewhere else by some other means. This in itself is suffering, that very construct. But when you see that and mind rests out of that, something else can be known and understood. So this path is always it's experiential, it's direct. We use concepts, we use the mind to recognize what's happening. And we also start to see through the very nature of concepts themselves. Doesn't mean they're not useful in our everyday functioning in the world, but we know and see them exactly for what they are rather than be fooled by them. There's useful concepts and very unuseful concepts. So, the words Atman, Brahman, all-pervading consciousness, and Sunya, Anatta, or non-self, that's emptiness and not self, the same. Atmajnana and Nirvana, the same. So I don't know about Atmajnana or Jnana, Atmajnana. This is an Advaita term. I don't know exactly what Atmajnana is pointing to. Maybe the knowledge of true self and Nirvana. Certainly Brahman, all-pervading consciousness, emptiness, not self-nature. Basically, yes, these terms across the different traditions, say the Advaita tradition and the Buddhist tradition, they are pointing to the same realization. And for many of us, it's hard to marry that, because we've got this sense of the self with the big S in the Advaita tradition, and not self pointing in the Buddhist tradition. So it appears it's pointing to opposite things, opposite, because the terms are opposite. But when you listen to the masters from these traditions, you start to see quite clearly the pointings, where they're pointing to, the finger pointing to the moon, to the realization of the true nature of reality. It's pointing in the same direction. And words, even within the traditions and even used by these masters, are very, very fluid, just as they are in the Buddhist tradition, in the Advaita, in the end, Nisargadatta, Ramana Maharshi, and the realized Buddhist masters, even the words in the Advaita, it points beyond the self. The Paramatman, or the Parabrahman, points beyond any sense of individualized self. There's a full realization of emptiness, the empty nature of all phenomena, of all things, and of all experiences, because things, phenomena, experiences, conditions, they all arise and cease. Even what in the Buddhist tradition, the Mahayana, Vajrayana tradition, they call it the phenomena of samsara and nirvana. So even the profound experiences and realizations, as they manifest, their conditions, perceived and conceived. That's not to say that they're wrong, but the ultimate reality is this unification, is the non-separation of emptiness and lucidity, emptiness and knowing. And it's not a thing, it's not a condition, it's the very nature. Very nature of what? As soon as I say what, it becomes a thing, right? We say very nature of mind, of the heart, of consciousness, awareness, of nirvana, ultimate reality. As soon as I name it, it becomes a thing, right? And that limits it. And this is why the Buddha said the nature of reality goes beyond the scope of language, beyond the scope of being able to conceive of it, because that function of language always creates a sense of thatness or thisness, subject, object. That's just the function of language and concept. So we have to see that. And that's why the realization of reality is always direct. The knowledge bubbles up to reflect that understanding, but those words and concepts in themselves are just that. But if there's no confusion about that, that's fine. When there's confusion about that, taking the finger to be the reality rather than the finger, the words or concepts pointing to the moon as the reality to be seen. Taking the finger, there's confusion. But knowing the function of the finger as a pointer and the reality as the reality is clarity, is understanding. So someone is asking, does Goenka 10-day retreats help to establish awareness about the 5 aggregates? I've only ever done one Goenka retreat before I ordained many years back. So I would say it would. The 5 aggregates is really the manifestations of body mind, and the Goenka approach is very much mindfulness of sensations, mental and physical sensations. So in a sense, it does cover and establish awareness of the 5 aggregates. Whether Goenka names these 5 aggregates and points to them in particular, I'm not really sure about that. You could do a Goenka retreat and see how that goes. How do you deal with the urge for entertainment and distraction in everyday life? So first, you recognize the urge for entertainment and distraction. It's always first you recognize. So you've already recognized you have urges for entertainment and distraction. I have urges for entertainment and distraction, but I have a precept to refrain from pointless entertainments and distraction. There's certain things that I can engage in as a monastic that, I can watch certain things on YouTube for educational purposes or religious purposes, that kind of thing. But it's the main thing is to know your mind. Are you seeking entertainment and distraction? And why? Usually the seeking of wanting something else, seeking entertainment is often because you're feeling bored right now. So we become aware of what is this feeling of boredom or feeling restless. They're both very habitual feelings and conditioned feelings. And unfortunately, our society, our culture these days have, particularly through the development of, computers and the internet, we've become conditioned to being stimulated very, very regularly with information and visuals and all sorts of things. So this is where meditation is helpful to step back from that, to step out of that and watch the mind. We can watch the mind in anything, but just, in any process, but sitting down for a particular period, whether it's 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and saying, I'm just going to sit here for that time, you're giving yourself some boundaries to observe the conditioned mind. Now, usually if you have these seeking urges for particularly entertainment and distraction, it's because you haven't noticed what's happening now. What is motivating the mind to want to move out of this present moment? Often any perceptions, concepts, feelings that are unpleasant or even neutral. Some people just want that stimulation. They become addicted to stimulation. So just looking at the mind and becoming interested in that very question. Look at the urge. What is this urge for so-called entertainment and distraction? Where is that coming from? What has given rise to the urge to seek something else? It's just like that earlier question about, is seeking enlightenment, can that also be an attachment? Any object that we think we can get in the future that will bring some sense of pleasure, if we don't see what the mind is doing, then we're caught up in samsara, in that process. But when we're seeing, without awareness, when we're seeing what the mind is doing, we have this opportunity to see the cause. Look at that cause. The cause of suffering is always in the present, to be seen, and it's always released or undone or disbanded in the present. And when that disbanding happens in the present, there's no longer that need to seek something else somewhere else. You taste satiety and contentment and peace here and now, just through the very clarity of seeing the truth of the way things are. It doesn't mean we don't do anything with our life. We constantly sit in contentment, but rather that contentment and peace becomes more and more accessible, or it pervades your life in whatever activities you find you need to be involved in. How do I discern whether the desire of wanting to talk to others about liberation to ease their suffering is a true desire or comes from ego? Well, that could be quite subtle. I mean, it can come from both compassion or ego. But the thing to discern is this person in a situation where they're open, where if I'm going to say something about, something to help ease their suffering, is that appropriate in this moment? Is that actually, do I sense that they're open to this, that they're interested a little bit? Usually telling other people about our own experiences is usually based in some kind of ego thing. We really have to put ourselves imagine the other. Are they really open? And is this really an appropriate time and place? Will this be helpful? In some cases, yes. And in some cases, you may just need to engage in a bit of a dialogue with this person about what might be helpful in this moment. But usually if there's this zeal for proselytizing based in something that I now know and want to share with everyone else, often that zeal of proselytizing is coming out of a sense of, I have it, I want you to have it, and it becomes a bit of a missionary thing. So we always have to be sensitive to the other, the time, the place, the situation, and allow that inner wisdom and compassion to be responsive in each moment to what might be helpful, rather than coming from an idea. And you'll sense, you always get feedback, whether just subtle or direct feedback from the other as to what's helpful and what's not. In Zen, we say direct seeing happens in the ever fleeting present moment. I'm looking at the present moment, and all these 10 fetters help me understand what I might see in the present moment. So there's a question mark there. That sounds like you're sharing something you've understood and you've got a question mark. But in Zen, we say direct seeing happens in this ever-fleeting present moment. I'm looking at the present moment, and all these 10 fetters help me understand what I might see in the present moment. So yes, whatever you're seeing, whatever you're experiencing, helps you understand what's happening. So it's all about resting in this awareness and seeing what is, sustaining that present moment awareness, and being willing to learn from what presents, what is. And naturally we see the fleeting nature of all conditions. And when the clarity of seeing that, or let's say when the experience of seeing that becomes fully clear, delusion is dispelled. So I got a little koan, it seems. What is your experience in relationship with green tea? I don't have one, because I'm quite caffeine sensitive, so even green tea can at times be overstimulating for me. So I'll just take this opportunity now while I remember someone saying thanks for making all these great videos with words from the masters, which is Jayasara's work. I'm Jitindriya. But just to say that I've talked before in these live streams about a set of meditations, contemplations I was working on for working with challenging emotions. So they are now on the website, on our vivekahermitage.com website, under the guided meditations, on the guided meditations page under the resources tab. So it's a set of 5 meditations. They're contemplations which include guided meditations, and they're looking at desire and fear, at anger, resolving anger, befriending anxiety, navigating depression, and embracing grief and loss. So they're each about half an hour long. So there's reflections, contemplations within that theme, and some guided meditation within that. So hopefully these will be helpful for many people who often ask about how to deal with these kind of challenging emotions from a practitioner perspective. There's a little intro to this series as well, just 2.5 minutes, which you should listen to because it just helps describe what these are intended for. They're not panacea cure-alls. They're just one way of working with these experiences from a meditator's point of view. Yeah, so be interesting. See how they go for you. How is the Thai tradition different in practice from Mahasi noticing? Also, what is Buddho practice? Is it the same as samatha breath meditation? Well, Buddho is a mantra, so it works the same as a samatha practice, but also as the samatha breath meditation, it's also vipassana. Samatha, vipassana, from my experience, they come together. Watching the breath may be more calming of the mind, but inevitably that clarity of the mind develops to see into the nature of this phenomena we call breath and the rest of what's going on in the mind. So this samatha vipassana, seeing into, having insight into the nature of things, they come together. The Mahasi notice, the Buddho is a mantra from the Thai forest tradition. Buddha or Buddho means awake or awakening. So similarly, it's a calming practice to use a mantra, but when you're using the word awake or awaken or Buddho, it also has a clarifying effect, pointing to the knowing, the ever-present knowing, the awareness, the aware nature of mind. Mahasi noting is, again, within the mindfulness practice. The noting is simply noting what's appearing. So if you're doing walking meditation, you're noting the touch of the foot. You might be noting the elemental experiences of earth, water, fire, air. Or if you're sitting, you might be noticing in-breath, out-breath, long in-breath, long out-breath, short in-breath, short out-breath. So the noting is simply a technique to help you come to the object of meditation and be with it, to settle the mind with that. And you may be noting thought, arising, ceasing, perception, feeling, pleasure, pain. Whatever is appearing in the mind, the noting is a technique to help. It's like a mental noting, a discursive noting. But at some point, that noting, once the mind is sufficiently calm and present, and no longer really just that strong push-pull, the noting can be let go. There's no longer a need to do discursive noting, just rest in awareness and know directly what's appearing, disappearing. Is it okay to say reality is free from suffering as awareness that I am really? Let me see, Kirk, if we get this straight. Is it okay to say reality is free from suffering as awareness that I am really is the natural state of mind? And know that humanity will awaken, grow up and clean up and sit quietly, still open to Chan. Okay. So there's not a lot of punctuation in that to help me get that clear, but I think I know what you're talking about. Look, it's okay to say that reality is free from suffering as awareness that I am really is the natural state of mind. It's okay to say that, but are you speaking from that? Are you resting as awareness? Is there resting as awareness? Is there really freedom from suffering? Okay, so we're not trying to just encapsulate the truth in a sentence so we can say it here and there and keep telling ourselves about that. Are you present, connected with the reality of awareness here and now? To know when there is that way of being and to know when mind is caught. To know the truth of suffering is the first noble truth. There is this, there is contraction, there is stress, there is suffering in some form or other, there is attachment in some form or other. To know that directly in the moment is to recognize the reality of the first noble truth here and now. That is an enlightening moment. The Buddha pointing to recognizing suffering in the moment is so important. It's the first signpost to freedom, because the mind is just wanting to get away, get away, get away, get away. You know, find a way to think about truth and try and hang on to that doesn't work. It's Four Noble Truths seen here and now. In fact, simultaneously, when truly seen, suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path. And sure, if humanity as a whole can do that, all good, very different world. Fact is, that's not going to happen, as much as we'd like it to. But the only place of awakening for anyone at any time is here and now, right here and now, in this very, very experience of embodied awareness. And yes, anyone who can come into that recognition can awaken. How to tackle fear of enlightenment. Fear of enlightenment, fear of dogs, cats, snakes, tigers, elephants, fear of climate change, fear of tsunamis, fear of anything is just fear. Curious that you would fear enlightenment, so it means you're conceiving of enlightenment in some way that's generating a perception of fear. So just look into what you're perceiving and conceiving, and you'll see why that fear is arising, and that will help you unpack that particular construct. There is both a Theravada and Mahayana temple in my area, and I'm having trouble deciding which one to join. Well, just go to them both. Why not? You don't have to join one and not join the other. Just go along to both, spend time at both, see what feels like it connects with you, what's helpful. You don't have to decide one or the other. Just experience, move into the experience of it, check it out, hang out, and you don't have to decide one or the other. If you want to go to both, go to both. Yeah, there'll be good stuff in both. This reality seems odd. It seems it seems we're born from karma into this realm of hungry ghosts to evolve ourselves and others out of it. Okay. You seem to be feeling like you're in a realm of a hungry ghost. The idea of the realm of a hungry ghost is a sense of being born into a place of not being able to get enough. Hungry ghost is symbolized by a being who has a big stomach and a very small mouth. They have arms with awfully long spoons, and they really have a lot of trouble getting the food into the mouth, and they can never get enough. So the symbolization is that, or the symbology there is that a hungry ghost experience is that of almost like deprivation and great desire that you can't fulfill. So this is the human realm, but we can experience mind states of this type, hungry ghost experience. But the other beautiful symbology, which I'm not sure where it emerged, but the idea that from the hungry ghost realm, if they figure out that they can actually, with these very long arms and long spoons, if they feed each other, they can start to feel satiated. So rather than focusing on trying to get something for me, they can more easily feed another hungry ghost, and they can feed them. So through compassion, kindness, sharing, thinking of the other, giving, this is how we emerge out of that confined state of deprivation and intense desire that we can't fulfill. Thinking of the other, thinking of others, sharing, giving. Some very motivations of bodhicitta, of compassion. And in fact, this is in some form, this is the liberating nature from all constricted and contracted realms of existence, is this motivation of compassion and dropping any sense of selfishness. So Adi's saying, I thought about you many times last week on retreat. What you do here is so precious. Thank you. Do you think we'll ever be able to do a YouTube retreat or something similar? Yeah, maybe we could do something similar. Our weekend retreat, we offered on Zoom. So we had 11 Zoomers join in, and there were, I think, about 40, 45 people resident. Yeah, so unfortunately, some of the first part of the retreat through a technical problem was lost. So the Zoom recordings probably just captured a little more than the second half of the retreat. But if you could write to JogMe. There's a contact on our webpage to see if you want to connect in, get those Zoom recordings. I'm sure they'd make them available for a small donation to JogMe, which is where we taught, Tibetan Center where we taught. Yeah, and we'll keep it in mind about the possibility of some YouTube retreat maybe. In the meantime, you can do your own retreat with all of our live archives as well. There's a lot of live meditations that we've taught and Q&A. Just setting up a schedule for yourself can be really helpful, to have a day retreat or a half-day retreat and listen to some of those meditation guidances and the responses to the Q&A. We've got so much material on our website. You can easily structure your own retreat. I know it might not feel the same, but that's one way of doing it until something else comes into shape. So Jen says, fear of enlightenment could be the fear of the ego of the unknown, which we ultimately are the unknown. Ego likes to stay within its known reality. Exactly. Ego wants to know. That's why it gets caught in thinking and trying to know through concept, but never satisfied that way. But ego is just a construct. So ego is a little bit like that hungry ghost experience at times. Just needs to know. You just look at it directly and look at its, the thought constructs that's coming out of a sense of uncertainty or not knowing, the fear of not knowing. But if you see that directly, you're seeing with direct knowing. And you're seeing that construct is fabricated in the moment. And the more you familiarize yourself with awareness, resting into awareness without having to rely on conceptualizing it, and becoming more familiar with the experience of impermanence or the fleeting nature of conditions, this anxiety of not knowing begins to fade, dissipate by itself. In fact, resting in not knowing is such a peaceful state and becomes a supercharged path of realization. Is it more skillful to start out with dry noting or to get concentrated enough to more effectively deal with hindrances before insight practice? I found that balance of samatha vipassana is more enjoyable but takes longer, and some days is hard to concentrate. Some days, yeah, it's good not to try to force the mind to concentrate. Get to know, yes, the calm and insight go together. It's good to find the way to let the mind calm initially, because then the clarity and seeing the insight into the way things are comes more naturally. If you try to force the mind to become one-pointed, it's like you're putting forceful energy into a mix of the mind which is already distracted. So it's like the wind keeps stirring up the waters. So engaging in a calming practice that's not forceful, that's actually enjoyable. You've got to find that for yourself, whether it's noticing the breath, the body, whatever it is, then do that until it feels enjoyable. But it's not going to feel enjoyable until you recognize and let go of the striving and the wanting. So there's the insight has to be there too, the mind that knows what's happening now. That's the vipassana aspect. Yeah. So you've got to just work with what's going on in your mind and just use these various guided meditations we offer or others offer to help. It is helpful to have a guided meditation to come into a more calm and clear place initially, because sometimes we just get in this whirl and we don't know how to rest out of it. So a little bit of guidance. We establish that listening, which is already connecting with that field, open field of receptivity, and the guidance, some wise pointers are helping the mind settle. Eventually you learn, the mind learns how to do that for itself. Direct seeing of the mind can only happen in the present moment. Present moment just changed again. It lasts just a second. Yes, well, if we're just seeing moments in the present, we might be viewing, a moment of concept or sound, sensation, the passing phenomena, changing phenomena. But there is that which can know, and that which is ever still, ever present. And this is the unconditioned nature of mind. What I was talking about earlier can only be known directly, not conceived of. That ever-present nature goes beyond past, present, future experiences or phenomena. It's non-dual recognition. So present from that perspective is all-embracing, non-arising, non-ceasing. It's not the present appearance of thingness per se, but it allows and encompasses that as well. But different traditions will use this language in different ways. So that's where we might get a little bit confounded by the words, the finger pointing. Can medication or stimulants for ADHD be huge obstacles in the spiritual path? The medication works to raise dopamine in the brain and speed up the mind. The medication has kicked off from calmness. I'm not sure if that's what you meant. Medication has kicked off from calmness or kicked off calmness. I'm not sure. I've never taken these medications for ADHD, so I don't know how they may or may not affect your practice. But since this style of meditation is just working with the way things are, it shouldn't be an obstacle. We're just working with the way things are, and awareness can know directly whether or not there's medication influences or not. Now, it may indeed affect whether the mind will come into a place of calmness, or it may not. That's for you to find out. If our essence is knowing, why do we allow ourselves to be trapped in samsara? That's just the situation. Are you awake now? Are you fully awake? Do you experience dukkha, stress, suffering, or not? It's a bit like asking, if God is all good and God created the world, why did he allow suffering? That's basically what you're asking. So we could say our essence is knowing. This is one way of saying it. But there are veils of ignorance or delusion that interfere with clear seeing. If you'll excuse me just a moment, I need to plug in just before I finish. I don't want to cut off. So one moment, please. Sorry for that. I had the phone plugged in, the fear that that would close, but now we've got the computer plugged in. That's better. So we're coming up to the end now anyway. So there's just 2 more questions, I think, so we'll just take it there. Is it possible for anyone to understand the reality and take this spiritual path without going through the pains of this world? I don't know. But here we are. We experience the pains of this world, and there is this teaching for us in this particular predicament to contemplate the experience of the pains, contemplate how the mind gets caught up, how we perceive, how we conceive, and how it's possible to live in this world without excessive, unnecessary suffering. Naturally, we're born, the body is born. As soon as it's born, there's aging, there's illness, there's death. These are givens, these are inevitables. There's relationships, there's misunderstandings, there's confusion, there's differing views amongst people. So the world is as it is. There's a degree of pain that is given with the body, and we have to learn how to work with. But the Buddha's teaching was that there is a lot of mental pain, distress, and suffering that is not a given that we can understand and learn to let go of and transcend, to come to a clearer understanding of the true nature of your being, which is not bound to the things of this world. But only you can realize that directly. But there are insights along the way into just how you hold suffering, but you have to be willing to look at it first and explore. Okay. So Barbara said that she's on that particular medication to help her think and focus, and she finds it doesn't impede her ability to be calm and relaxed. Thanks for that input, Barbara. So that's fantastic. Okay, I think that's it for today. That's all the questions, and there were several comments and lots of people saying they appreciate what's on offer on our YouTube channel, and also go visit our website, vivekahermitage.com, and you'll find lots of other resources there. And as I said, that new set of 5 contemplations and meditations on working with challenging emotions. There'll be something there for everyone, but they are kind of designed to help people in the midst of those experiences to come out the other side with a little more understanding and peace, hopefully. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Jen just said it can be so paradoxical sometimes when philosophizing you see that 2 apparently opposite truths can be said to be true at the same time. Can feel like going mad at times. Yes, until you look into the nature of concept and discern the finger from the moon, just as I said. Terrific. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining in, and I wish you all well, and maybe see you here in 2 weeks' time for our last session on the Buddha Dharma series. And we'll probably be talking about the conditioned and the unconditioned mentioned today, samsara and nibbana. Who wouldn't want to listen to that? Okay. Thanks again, everyone. Take care. Bye for now.